Coming up after Skahawk, we have the girl herself, Jean Alter, going up on Raid Up, and like the last video, I'm going to be covering Jean in today's video with the buff she'll be getting on JP, so you guys can get a better idea of how good the servant is going to be in the future, because that may influence your decision. And this is actually a really hard one for me to tell people to not summon on, because as you guys know, Jean Alter is one of my favorite characters in just all of FGO, both as wifey material and as an actual character herself. I mean, she gets to do a lot of cool stuff, so I don't know, I just end up really liking her a lot. She gets to be Santa, she gets to be a villain, she gets to like train in the underworld and everything, just a whole bunch of cool stuff that she gets to do. And we'll be talking about how good she is in FGO in today's video, so strap in, get comfortable, it's time to praise the girl Jalter. Starting off with her hits, Jalter, thankfully, despite being a year 1 servant, still has pretty decent hit to natural like NP gain and star gen ratios. Her star gen's not super good at 6% with only 3 hits on the 1 quick card, but more importantly, as a buster servant, she has 2 buster cards to bust her brave chain with her NP, and as you guys may know, Jalter has like the highest attack in the game, so when you're doing buster brave chains, you are doing a mad amount of damage. And then she also has those 2 arts cards with only 2 hits on them, which may seem a little bad, but because she's supposed to be a general crit servant, because her crit skills are just generic, like, oh, just get general star weight, just general crit damage, you're going to be getting crits on those arts cards, and they have 0.83% NP gain, meaning Jalter refunds an absolute mad amount of her NP anytime she gets a crit. And she has the Avenger passives, which, if you aren't aware, basically she's going to be getting a passive 4% NP every single turn, and literally if she gets just breathed on by an enemy, she generates like 30% of her NP back. Like, if somebody sniffs in her direction, she's getting like all of her NP back. So she's pretty good as an NP generation machine, even if you're having some struggles with the arts card and the NP gain, which you really shouldn't be, because again, she should be critting a lot, especially after the buff that came to her NP. But you guys also know the secret reason that I really think Jalter is just a supreme god tier servant is that extra attack. If you're unaware, the extra attack is a composite card that gens stars NP and does big boy damage. And the girl Jalter over here is rocking 7 hits on her extra attack, which, if you guys are, you know, longtime viewers of the channel, 5 is the standard, and she is 2 hits higher than that. So her extra attack and a brave chain can actually drop some decent stars, and can actually help her refund a bit of her NP. And in fact, if you're a big brain FGO player, you might go ahead and just level up her append skill to get a little bit of extra efficacy on that extra attack and just truly let her pop off. But let's go ahead and look at Jolter Skills, because surprisingly, despite her being a year 1 servant, a lot of these skills are just built to last. Like, they're all just still really solid. And just kind of preemptively, the only thing I think maybe Jalter could use is like a battery skill, maybe, because she literally has everything a really good DPS needs. Starting off with her first skill, Jalter's pretty much the one that pioneered this style of skill, where you get the 50% critical damage buff for 3 turns, and then just decent star weight also for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. This is just generic foundational crit damage skill like 101, right? And it was kind of a big deal when she came out, because to put it in perspective, Waver's crit damage buff with 50% as well, and so she was able to give that to herself on top of any other buffs you would give her, like with Waver or Merlin or something, and it just lends to her being able to do really solid crit damage, because she's going to be doing the most damage when her mana burst is active, and so on the turns that the mana burst is down, you can still make up for the lost damage of that massive card buff by doing huge crits with her first skill. Then we move into her second skill, which again is really good. I mean, you can maybe say a buff for Jalter would be giving herself the dragon trait, but that would be a little OP for this, because what it does is it's a charisma, so it's a 20% attack buff to the entire party for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. But then if you have the dragon trait, those allies get an additional 20% attack for those 3 turns. So she double buffs dragons, meaning Jalter and Salter, the dynamic duo, Jalter can just gas her up and function as like kind of a support for Salter, because not only can she just give her a massive attack buff, but on her own NP she can kind of drop stars, so pretty good wombo combo. Another common servant people may have that fall under the dragon trait is someone like Siegfried or Sigurd, although I think Siegfried's a bit more common than Sigurd because it seems like everybody's got him. This is also extending to your other characters like the Lancer Artorias, if you pull Melusine in the future, your MHX alters, just all of these like really good servants that you could pair with Jolter to have her kind of just be a pseudo support slash DPS specifically for those setups. I mean, Ibuki's going to be coming out, and Ibuki plus Jolter is pretty good for challenge quests because Ibuki functions as your AoE damage dealer and Jolter's your single target. You can do stuff like that. Pretty solid if you just want to put a little bit of like thinking into doing some interesting team comps. But yeah, then you move on to her third skill. This is the Buster Mana Burst I was talking about earlier. It's a 50% buff to her Buster cards. Massively gasses up the damage of her NP. If you can time this on a turn that you also have 2 of her Buster face cards, you can do a Buster Brave Chain, you are going to nuke the enemy into submission. It is really strong. It also gives her an invincibility for 1 turn, and this is on a total 6 turn cooldown. And funny enough, if you look at the last effect here, that deals 1000 damage to self. For some reason, when Jalter first came out, people tried to use this to justify that she was bad, and it's like, dog, the enemy's probably going to be obliterated when she procs the skill. Because remember, this is year 1, there's no break bars. Jolter's just going to slam the enemy for a million bajillion damage. So who cares if she does 1000 damage to herself? Even then, 1000 damage is not significant at all, especially because now we have someone like Merlin who, on top of all of the other things he does for Jolter, he gives her HP every turn with his NP. So it's like, dog, don't let anybody tell you that like dealing 1000 damage to yourself is a bad thing. Like, it literally just doesn't matter. It is a complete non-point when talking about her. The only thing is that like maybe in the future they'll buff this to being like the 50% mana burst for 3 attacks for 3 turns. That way you can kind of spread the damage out a little bit. It would be really good in a situation where, like, let's say your first Jolter turn is like her Buster NP and then like her quick card and her arts card. Then the next turn you get 2 of her Buster cards. That would let you spread out the damage a little bit more and not blow all of it on that first turn. That could be a little bit better. I hope you're going to be a little more consistent, quote unquote, when it comes to her damage. But really, the fact that she has very good crit skills and has a very solid attack move to give to herself kind of just make up for the fact when the mana burst is down. Finally, we go over to her NP, which was already really good as is because it's a single target Buster NP with 10 hits, which actually does mean she could kind of drop some stars if you buff her star gen because it just has so many hits on it. But then the crazy thing is that it inflicts buff block static to the enemy, and this is really good for bosses because bosses usually have these like big chunky buffs, right? It's like a buff with like 3 effects in it, and because you negate that first buff, you negate all of the following effects, and it can be used to easily cheese things like the Zeus fight, the Qi Shi Huang fight, and Lost Belts 5 and 3 respectively. But then they buff the NP, not only meaning that it hits way harder now, but it also just drops 30 stars every time she fires her NP, which is literally just ridiculous, right? Because it makes Jolter giga consistent. 30 stars when she can already drop like 22 pretty consistently in a Brave Chain, basically means you bust her Brave Chain or you just do some Brave Chain with Jolter, more than likely you're going to have upwards of 40 to 50 stars at the end of that Brave Chain for the next turn, so you can just start doing some big crits, guaranteed, and just obliterating the enemy. So is Jolter worth summoning for? I mean, it's really hard for me to say that she's not worth summoning for because she's still, even in current JP, very good for obliterating bosses. And while she can kind of be a one-pump chump with her NP because she does lose the Buster Mana Burst after the first turn, she can still mop up enemies with her crits, and it just makes her very good in general. It's also really hard for me to tell people to not summon for Jolter when I know she's as popular as she is. At the end of the day, I would advise you to save for Castoria because that is just the smartest thing to do. However, throwing like a multi or 2 for Jolter, especially if you have someone like Merlin, or maybe you're planning to like go really hard for Koyenskaya, Jolter is really good with either one of those. Even if you don't have Merlin though, you can kind of like pick up Waver for free with your ticket and then just use a friend Merlin and just kind of pop up and obliterate people. Jolter also is really unique in that if you're struggling in Lost Belt 3 or Lost Belt 5.2 with, as I mentioned, Zeus and Qi Shi Huang, she pretty much just obliterates those fights, right? Like, she specifically has like really good story battles that she's really good at beating, so if you're really struggling with those, you might just be able to summon for her or just bring a friend Jolter off the friends list. But I don't know, maybe you want to do it with your own servants, I don't know. But that's just kind of my 2 cents on the whole thing. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We're still trying to hit 100K, and all support is greatly appreciated. I stream every weekday over on my Twitch, so come around for that. If you want to see some more free content, you can also click that join button to get extra bonus content as a channel member. Finally, if you want to support the channel for free, you can download LD Emulator, link down in the description down below. Just a good way to play mobile games on your computer. I personally use it when I stream. I love it a lot. And then there's loot cakes, which basically anytime someone in my alliance spends money on FGO, we all get points for it, and we can use those points to then buy gift cards. So just a really good way to get a little bit more bang for your buck when you do actually spend on FGO. But yeah, with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Same ZTL time, same ZTL channel. Peace.